Hello everyone, welcome back to Soch. So today again, we're going to talk about something that usually people don't want to talk about or not noticing enough. But this is something which happens every day on a daily basis. And that's Charika Gold for you.
And I'm Suhani Singla. Today we are going to dig into something that happens to every single one of us in our daily lives, and we don't even realize that it's happening to us. So the topic that we're going to dive into right now is e-commerce platforms and the practices that they engage in to increase their sales and to increase their consumer outreach.
So for example, if you guys remember that suddenly you are doing a Zomato shopping or in the Nykaa itself, and then you reach at the last page and suddenly there's an increase of 200 rupees. But like, why is that? I did not buy that, right? And then we also see that there is a rush of 7-minute sale, and then because of that rush, I even don't want to buy the thing, but I actually end up buying it. And then also I feel there is something about subscriptions that I have not even signed up for the similar app, but suddenly I'm subscribed to it. And according to me, that's not a coincidence. That is something, a design that companies do so that their sales can go up. And I also feel there is a proper dark pattern thing in this, and that is a proper terminology, and which we're going to talk about today. And for that, we have two incredible guests, that is Professor Nikhil Narain and Professor Saurabh Mukhopadhyay.
Right. So first up, we have with us Professor Nikhil Narain with us. Professor Nikhil Narain is an assistant professor at Jindal Global Law School, and he's one of India's youngest Shebling scholars. He has advised UN on digital economy policy and co-authored 2 editions of Artificial Intelligence and Law. He currently teaches regulating AI at JGLS and writes regularly for LiveMint, The Hindu, and First Post on tech law and consumer rights. So these 2 aspects are exactly the kind of topics that we'll be talking about today. So yeah.
And then we have Professor Saurabh Mukhopadhyay, who brings up deep real-world insight into how companies actually make decisions around consumer-facing designs. And for that, he has also worked as a senior associate at Anand & Anand, one of India's leading IP law firms, where he argued before the Delhi High Court and the Supreme Court. Advised major clients including social media platforms, FMCG companies, automobile manufacturers, and the other firms. What makes this perspective especially valuable is that he has worked closely with very kinds of companies often associated with dark patterns. Having seen decision making from the inside, he understands and how and why these practices emerge in real business settings. And now let's continue with what is dark pattern.
Thank you, Charika and Suhani, for wonderfully and warmly hosting both of us. So, coming straight to your question, what are dark patterns? I think Suhani very succinctly said that it is something that the users never intend to do, and they suddenly think that something has been done to them. So, when I have to talk about dark patterns, it's usually around a facet that some design practices that platforms deploy, where users end up clicking or making choices that they never intended to make in the first place. So it has got everything to do with the UIs or the UX that we call user interface and the user experience.
Okay. But so as you mentioned that intended to do. So do you think there is something psychological about it?
Of course. So when we say or when we talk about any kind of action that anyone takes, any user takes on the internet, a lot of it has been and is being fueled by algorithms, by how you are made to see something, how tempting something feels to you. So it's a mix of a lot of things. In fact, if you ask me personally, it moves beyond consumers. It is about behavioral patterns, it is about governance, it is about platform regulation, it is about privacy. So there are various facets of it, and the discounts, the money is still the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, So, as Professor Nikhil said about that, there are a lot of aspects to it. According to you, Professor, what do you think which is the main highlight of it? Like he also mentioned about discounts. So, do you think that is actually relevant where we make the choices that we never wanted to make?
See, dark patterns are of various kinds, and there are studies that have shown thousands of different kinds of dark patterns, and even if you categorize them into broad categories, you'll still be left with a dozen, right? Indian law also recognizes up to 13 different types of dark patterns, and these are just broad categories. There are a lot of subcategories, variations, and every dark pattern for every platform is different. So I won't go and say that there is one particular dark pattern which is the most important one. There are multiple kinds, and each one has its own impact. Discounts, or well, when they show that there is a discount and they create an urgency that you must purchase this product within the next 7 minutes or the deal is gone, right?
Yeah.
That urgency or fake urgency that is created, or discounts that are shown to you, whenever you go to any online site nowadays, right? There's always a discount. There is never a time when they say this is the price, that's it. They'll always show an original price, they'll cut it, and they'll show present price. The question is the original price that they're showing even real? What they do is they inflate the prices first,
Yes.
then they give a discount, and they show it in a way that you think you're making a steal deal out of it, right? These are various ways in which you are being forced into, well, I will not say forced, but let's say coaxed into transactions you would not otherwise enter into. And you spoke about intention, right?
Yes.
Dark patterns is making us do something that we didn't intend.
Exactly.
I don't entirely agree. I say it's changing your intentions. You do intend to do what you are doing, but that intention is engineered. It is engineered carefully using psychological tropes, using various means, including discounts, including the way the interface is designed, including the manner in which you are being tracked and why you are being targeted by a particular advertisement. All of these things together is changing your intention, making you do something which you would not have freely done if not for that intervention. So that's my understanding of dark patterns.
Totally, Professor. Professor, you mentioned that companies use algorithms, and when we say the word algorithm, so it does mean that it is a design and it's an intentional design. But Professor, your insight that companies do intend to change our intention when it comes to shopping experiences. So could we expand more on the user interfaces that these companies design to maybe manipulate us to confuse the advertisements and the dark patterns?
So, see, you have to also understand that there is a broader play of this entire scenario, and I can go ahead and relate it to a lot of things, including fairness and inclusion to an extent, because there are, as Deep said, that these actions are engineered. Okay, so you mix algorithm, you mix that engineering. You also try to then understand that if, say for example, I am a child and I'm on the internet, I'm purchasing something. If I'm a first-time internet user with the kind of digital divide that persists in any economy, whether do we make an informed decision is a different ballgame altogether. But if in this particular situation or a scenario, we try to infuse certain characteristics or parameters that further fuel this kind of fairness or inclusion, the gap between different type of users. So that is a broader problem that we need to address. So most of the time, that's why I said that for dark patterns, we may need to move past also consumers, because most of the time you see that you may not, or dark pattern may not impact you in money-wise, but it may have some other facets to it, where you might end up sharing more data about you than you intended to. Again, with the intention thing segregated, but these are the broader actions leading to different consequences, and most of the times context plays a very important and critical role in ascertaining or at least trying to that what a fair pattern looks like or should look like. We know what is prohibited, what you can't do, but to actually come up with a definition of what you can do is equally problematic.
Right.
And that's not only concerned with the dark pattern, but majorly anything on the internet or platform regulation.
Okay. So basically, you're saying that what is prohibited and what is permitted, both of these are like equally concerned topics. Right?
Yes, it cannot exist in cyber. So it's better that when we say that this isn't allowed,
Exactly.
we also explicitly mention what is allowed.
Yeah.
Because the moment you kind of, just like Soraitis paradox,
Yeah.
you never know when does a heap of grain stops being called a heap of grain. So something on those lines.
So another point that you mentioned, Professor, about the data sharing, even like personally, we have 3 apps with us like Zomato, Swiggy and Blinkit. So when Blinkit came later than Zomato, and we also see that when we open Blinkit, they don't even give an option for us to sign in, and they like directly ask us that do you want us to import your data from Zomato. So this also indirectly shows that they have already collected our data and maintained it in a way that whenever they are creating a new company, whenever they are creating a new app, that app already has our data, and all that it is asking us is whether we would want to fill that data again, or they could import it from another app. So that is a genuine concern about the data sharing and the privacy too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as you talked about intention and privacy, permissions and everything, so this kind of I think leads us to where law has to be involved, because there has to be some guidelines to it, some permissions to it. So for that, what do you think, how should we go about it? How is law being involved into it, that they actually have to, of course you mentioned points about intention and everything, but when it becomes such a verge that in 2023 they came with the whole law itself, and then they have to come up with the guidelines in 2025. So we see that in these 20s only something is happening at a very high rate that the law has to be so concerned about it. Can you mention some new cases or anything comes into your mind according to this aspect?
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why we're seeing law finally waking up to the realities of the digital world, one of the main reasons is how pervasive the digital world has become. Over the last 10 years or so, I would say, especially in a country like India, the digital world has expanded. And by that, I mean more and more people are engaging with the digital world. It may be because of cheaper smartphones, it may be due to cheaper and more accessible internet, but a lot of people have joined the digital world in the last few years. And at the same time, technology is developing on the other hand, which allows marketing, which allows digital marketing particularly, to be very targeted, right? 20 years back, 15 years back, we still had marketing. Even a few decades back, we had marketing, right? You walk into a car showroom, the person running the showroom or the salesman will try to sell you a car.
Yes.
Sometimes a car you may not need, right? Is that not a type of a dark pattern where your intention is being engineered? You go in for a car which is worth 10 lakhs, that's your budget. They try to push you to 15, 20 lakhs, telling you, this car has this feature, that feature, etc. So marketing has always existed, but we never considered it a problem.
Yes.
We try to regulate false marketing. We try to say, okay, there are some trade practices which are unfair, illegal, but we didn't say you cannot market at all, or you cannot try and persuade a customer. Now, when we have taken this marketing to the next stage in the digital world, where AI can now predict what a particular person wants, what he likes, the entire data that companies are collecting about us, our browsing histories, our purchase history, they're now not being processed by human beings because that would take time, it would be costly. All of that is now automated. That means tracking us is becoming more and more easier, cheaper, and accurate. So with those changes, obviously the significance of dark patterns is increasing. What dark pattern could have done 10 years back, or the harm that it could have caused, it can do so now at a much higher rate, exponentially so. So given those circumstances, the need for law to regulate dark patterns is being felt. And that's true for all digital technologies, right? We have AI, which was not regulated at all in India till a few months ago. We didn't have any hard laws regulating AI. Now we have an amendment to the IT rules as recent as February of 2026, right? So the government, the lawmakers are now being forced to look into this problem because of the increasing magnitude of the problem.
Professor, one more thing that, as Sharika mentioned, that there was a need in India to release the guidelines that were mentioned. Professor, we totally understand that how the dark patterns evolved and how there was a need for a law to be emerged. But what we didn't understand is that like the guidelines were out in 2023. Did something major happen in the duration of the other 2 years that there was a need to release another advisory on the same thing, like by the government? There was the known 2025 advisory on these dark patterns only. So, could you share your insights on those?
Suhani, see, what happens with technology or anything to do with regulating anything concerning technology is that you have to be very cautious. Because one, you have to be cautious about that you do not stifle innovation at the same point of time. That's one of prominent parameters.
Right.
Second thing is that when you try to regulate anything, you also have to be cautious that you do not end up over-regulating. Okay? And that is why you will often hear this, that the law always catches up to technology. Because if the law actually is ahead of technology, it may end up, one, we'll never know how the nature of technology will change.
Exactly.
So the dark patterns that we are discussing today, so Deep gave a befitting example of how things work in person versus what technology does to you. Tomorrow we may not anticipate sitting here in this room that what may be questions for future considerations, right? So whenever the government, whenever there are guidelines, let's see, it's not about that if there was a guideline and then there was an advisory issued in furtherance of a guideline, it has to be taken or construed to be taken in a negative manner or negative connotation that people were not complying. Okay, because I know that businesses started complying with, okay,
Exactly.
these are not allowed, you have to make these changes, you cannot bring those design nudges wherever you want. But at the same point of time, if such periodic advisories keep coming in, it acts as a reminder for the broader industry players or the stakeholders that you have to keep up with what's there already.
So, Professor, you mentioned that businesses are complying with the rules mentioned in the guidelines, in the 2023 guidelines. We would like to know more about the steps the businesses and the companies are taking to maintain very safe consumer shopping experience. Maybe like self audits that we read, or any more such steps that businesses are taking.
Okay, Deep can go ahead and I'll add on to what we
See, I have a different opinion on this issue.
Sure.
And the reason I have it is because I don't see 100% compliance to the guidelines of 2023. Of course, there is an attempt, there is an awareness in companies that, okay, this is something we are not supposed to do. But given the nature of the guidelines itself, right, violation of it is not immediately met with penalties. Right? The difference between an act of parliament or rules which are enforceable versus a guideline. You violate the guideline, you're not immediately being made prone to liability. the CCPA, which is the Consumer Protection Authority at the central level, would actually need to take you to court first, right? And sue you, say that you are doing an unfair trade practice by violating the guidelines, and win. That hasn't happened. The enforcement has not happened. So the dark patterns that are prescribed by the guidelines, and I said that there are 13 of them recognized under the guidelines, many of them I see continues, right? You still go to a website and you find it very difficult to delete your account. And not only a website, recently I use a telecom service which also provides me Wi-Fi at home. I will not take names, but I wanted to discontinue, right? Because I was moving apartments. The place where I was shifting to did not have that telecom provider providing Wi-Fi services. All I wanted to do is discontinue. Very difficult. I am a person, I consider myself to be reasonably educated, young enough to know how technology works. I use these applications, yet for days I struggle to delete and to say that I want to deactivate my account. They allow me to upgrade. It's very convenient for me to upgrade. It's very convenient for me to add services. It was very convenient to me to even start off these services when I first started it. But now that I want to leave it, they make it purposely difficult, right? Eventually I had to send them an email, stop paying them. Then they started coming after me saying, you've not paid your last bill. And I showed them the email sent months ago saying, I wanted to discontinue, you didn't let me discontinue. So these practices are continuing, and the lack of enforcement of guidelines and the Consumer Protection Act is causing this.
Right, Professor. So Professor, it's genuinely a hassle when it comes to like discontinuing subscriptions and continuing these premiums that we usually subscribe to. Professor, another example that I would like to draw in is a LinkedIn. Like, being a first year law student, I just like started my LinkedIn account, and there's that premium option that shows on LinkedIn. So the thing is that these pop-ups come up like every time. Even if I'm opening LinkedIn 10 times a day, these pop-ups come like join premium for trial. So what I understand from trial is that it is supposed to be free, like for 1 week, 1 month. But what they actually do is that they want my financial details before I start that trial, and they make it seem as if it is easy to cancel the subscription if I want to. But as you mentioned, it's obviously a hassle when I genuinely want to cancel. And what happens is that I'll automatically think that instead of like wasting my time canceling this, I'll just like enjoy the premium. And Professor, continuing about the awareness that you mentioned, I agree that businesses have become aware. But you had mentioned that the businesses are aware, obviously, after the 2023 guidelines. So, but our concerned demographic in this podcast is Gen Z. So, Gen Z is like known to be, or is like the most digitally literate generation till now. And we've literally, as Charika mentioned, that we've literally grown up with like smartphones and televisions and all that. So, why do like Gen Z need to be aware about the dark pattern?
Okay, then I'll just take a little detour, and with respect to when we look at platforms, or when we look at technology, when we look at dark patterns, amongst other things, what exactly is the trade-off in terms of when you have discussions around data protection, data privacy, that the consent was not informed, it was a bundled consent. When you're talking about that we don't see whether there was a handling charge added in addition to the delivery charge, so on and so forth, it's about convenience, right? So the point is that we are willing to trade off different facets of things for convenience, because these services, these platforms, they make our lives convenient. But at the same point of time, when you say that, of course, there can be people who are digitally literate, but still, that is still a small chunk of the population. And second of all, when it comes to the law, see, the very purpose of a law is to create order in human relations. This was told to me by one of my professors at Queen Mary. And and it does not concern whether you are a Gen Z, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a doctor or anything else. As long as you are there. So that's what the purpose of law is, that even if you don't know, so committing an act that can cause hurt to somebody else is coded in a law. It has some kind of a punitive action, right? Why? Because the act itself is questionable. It may cause somebody trouble, somebody a possible harm. So if we try to also, I'm not saying it, people can have different opinions about it, but if we can also try to understand that if something has become so increasingly integrated in our lives, should there be a greater onus or a greater sense of responsibility? Of course on the platforms as the service providers, but also on the users, so that they also become aware of what their rights are. So nobody is going to tell you what your consumer rights are. You know what your consumer rights are. So if you order something on from any e-commerce website and you're not satisfied with what is delivered to you, you have a recourse. You have a mechanism to exercise that because you're informed. So we have to just make sure that these amounts of information somehow are woven into the practices by the service providers, and also how the users act when they are interacting with these services or availing these services.
Or would you say, and whose duty is it? So is it the consumer's duty to be aware of their rights and to be like aware of the dark patterns and check them on the platforms? Or is it the platforms and the organization's duties to make sure that on their platforms it's easier for the consumer to be aware of these things?
Yeah, so I think it's a duty that should fall on both sides. There should be a duty on the sellers, on the businesses, to make it to be reasonably fair, to not indulge in practices which are blatantly unfair, blatantly manipulative, which may cause harm to consumers, and that's what the law has always done, right? Despite the principle of caveat emptor, we've always had the situation that law says X, Y, Z things are harmful, thus you cannot do it. Or if you do it, these are the conditions or these are the precautions you need to take. So that's on the business side. Equally, on the consumer side, you also need to be aware. Now, digital literacy or digital engagement is not the same as digital awareness. The fact that Gen Z uses digital platforms a lot, maybe more than any other generation before them, does not make them aware. That does not mean they're aware. They just use it more often. To be aware, they need to actually be able to understand that something is wrong. And dark patterns are made in a way that you do not understand that something's going on. That's the whole point. It's not on your face. It's manipulative, it's subliminal, and generally, unless you actually pay attention, you will not notice it.
I think so. To summarize this Gen Z and the companies, we can just say this, that Gen Zs or the people who are consumers, they should be aware, but on the very side, companies should follow some ethics so that there is a balance to it. Because of course, as a consumers in the near future world, we cannot go without these platforms. But on the very side, they are the ones who have to make profit also, because in the end, businesses are there for the profit, for the money itself. So we need, according to the conversation that professors did, I came to an understanding that there should be balance of ethics and awareness.
Yeah. And to add to that, the conversation also involved points on government regulation. So as both of you mentioned, that government regulations are very necessary when things get out of control. And when any new, let's say, aspect of technology is introduced in the society, be it AI, be it dark patterns as we see, so regulation is necessary. But again, government needs to take a backhand when it comes to regulation, so that the risk of over-regulation is taken care of. And another thing is that, as Professor you mentioned, that there's a lack of enforcement. The awareness part is still taken care of in the last decade, but there's a lack of enforcement. So,
and to kind of sum it up, we would really like your insight individually. That would you like us give us some good examples that will actually help? Because I would also say that not everybody is going to go and read the guidelines. or the advisory, right? So can you give us like a small tactics? For example, I remember in the Professor Nikhil's class that he mentioned that, for example, if you have to go for an email, right, and by any chance I do not give my original email to it, we can just make another email and then give that so that the real information doesn't go away. I feel that was a quite useful thing. I actually applied in my real life. So I would just like the similar kind of examples that you can give us so that we can be stopped from, at least the people who will watch this video, they will have these tactics to follow in their everyday lives.
Okay.
Should I start?
Okay.
I have a few tips. I mean, I follow them myself.
That's great.
So I have this rule, right? Whenever I am angry or sad and I want to write something to someone, I don't send it at that time. I sleep over it. Similarly, when I want to buy something online, I never buy it the day I choose to buy it. I sleep overnight. The next morning, if I still want it and if I still think it's a good deal, I go ahead and purchase it. So I sleep over it before making that decision. That's one thing. Another thing is I usually don't add my payment methods. I don't save it, right?
Okay.
My credit card and other details, I don't save it in any of the platforms. So that every time I am purchasing something, it really sinks in because I'm putting in all the data, I'm taking all the steps to purchase something. It shouldn't feel that by a click of a button, I just purchased another thing. So that gives me some pause, some time to reconsider, think, and often I have gone to the last stage of ordering something on Zomato.
Yes.
And when I had to put my credit card details, I realized, maybe I'm buying too much. And I let it be.
Very nice, yes.
So these are a couple of tips that I follow for myself.
It's really great. And
So, Charika mentioned that Gen Z may not go through the guidelines. I'm assuming that they will not have time to go through my book as
Even
well.
though they're readable,
So-
we ourselves very should,
Yes.
but we just know.
I don't think so.
So then I can say that okay, I have worked on the guideline and made it simpler for people to understand in my latest book. So you can
Maybe.
go through that. But fantastic tips shared by Professor Deep, and some of the tips that what I genuinely follow is not to share my contact number specifically when I am shopping in person or in stores. Then they say that sir आपको invoice आपके WhatsApp पे आएगा. And I'm like, मुझे invoice physical copy में चाहिए because you cannot say no to me for that.
Yes.
Okay, so you see that a lot of businesses have also moved to instant messaging applications to share invoices. And you have a right to ask for a physical copy of invoice.
Yeah.
Click a picture of it, have it in your gallery, favorite it, or mark it in some way. So I do that. Then most of the times when I have to make any ticket booking or something on those lines, I make sure to see the breakup. So or anything for that matter, I have now made it a point to see the price breakup. So if I'm ordering food, I see a price breakup. That if there is some surcharge that is added. So is there a possibility that okay, I'll wait for another hour and that surcharge goes away. So where in all those possibilities where I can actually wait, as Deep rightly pointed out, to let go of these extra charges. So these are some of the pointers, and just be very cautious with what you share in terms of whenever you're making purchases, whenever you are interacting with somebody. And as I said, that goes beyond never never disclose your live location. So you went out at a very fancy place. Do not put Instagram and Snapchat stories right there, because you're also disclosing your location, and specifically if you have a public account at those places. Although this has got nothing to do with dark patterns, but since we discussed Gen Zs, yes. So a broader part of cyber hygiene.
I would just like to share one incident. Like you said, the sleep over your purchase if you're purchasing anything. So this is a mistake actually my roommate did recently. So she was ordering like a lipstick from Nykaa, and she ordered it the day she ordered it was for 800, and the very next day she checked the price, it was for 560, and for the next week she was regretting it, that why did I just make an impulse purchase. So like the sleep over it tip is really useful for Gen Z. I really
I agree because I think we are impatient. I will agree on that.
But you have to be very cautious as well, because what if that lipstick costed 1100 the next day?
That's always a possibility, Professor. That's always a possibility.
Yes. But Professor, I think you just mentioned your book that actually simplifies the guidelines. Would you like to share your book name so that if they don't want to go for the guidelines, they can at least refer it to your book?
So that's Technology, Law, Regulation, Cyber Policy and the Digital Landscape. That's the latest book, and that book has 15 chapters. So just like Amazon's A to Z, it is an A to Z of tech. Focused on the Indian law primarily, 70 to 75%, but it also goes into other jurisdictions and dark patterns as well. I've decoded the dark pattern guidelines and also put in some great screenshots from my phone that I took, of course not naming which platform, which brand or whatever, just so users or readers get to know that these are being deployed and what they are.
I really hope that some of our viewers generally check out that book. And as we draw to the close of the conversation, so I would like to ask both of you to give one advice to our concerned demographic Gen Z, as well as other adults who might be watching our podcast. Like one advice that they could take away from this podcast when it comes to online shopping, dark patterns, any regulation, awareness, like just to sum it up.
Well, for me, it would be use technology, but not blindly. Keep your eyes open, ears open, be aware of what's happening around you. Don't be too dependent, because technology is something which is easily given access to and easily taken away from. Right? So don't be too dependent and keep your eyes and ears open.
I think I'll like to say that wherever you make a choice, just introspect and question, is the choice really yours?
So to summarize, this isn't just about money or getting tricked into spending. It's a much bigger game altogether. Dark patterns can also widen gaps between users by affecting fairness and inclusion in how platforms are designed. Sometimes you may not lose money at all, but you end up sharing more personal data than you intended, often without even realizing it, and that has its own long-term consequences. Ultimately, context matters a lot. What seems normal in one situation might actually be unfair or manipulative in another. So the real challenge is figuring out what genuinely fair design should look like. And with that, I would really like to thank our guests, Professor Nikhil Narain and Professor Saurabh Mukhopadhyay. Thank you so much. I think this video will actually help you to get aware about the things which are going in everyday life. And I really wish that you guys take some insight to it and also apply it in your life, because the professors here have actually made some good points to make your life better.
Yeah, totally, professors. We would really carry this conversation throughout our lives. And to our audience, if you want to read more, look up the CCPA guidelines on prevention and regulation of dark patterns 2023. These are surprisingly readable, and darkpatterns.org has a global view of this issue. We'll drop both the links in the description along with the link to Professor Nikhil Narain's book. This is a sincere request to the Gen Z and the adults who will be watching this to totally check out that book and the guidelines and the screenshots as Professor mentioned. So we are Suhani and Charika signing off for Soch.